All right, there's going to be a telephone conference call with the Consulate General of Israel, who's based in Los Angeles. Today is July the 17th, 2014.
And thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today on this conference call. And frankly, this was a conference call we had prayed we wouldn't need. We had hoped that by this point the conflict would be over. As most of you know, Israel observed a recommended Egyptian ceasefire. Hamas did not. Israel also observed yesterday a humanitarian United Nations ceasefire. The minute it was over, Hamas began its resumption of firing rockets into Israel. So here we are with the conflict ongoing. It's important that we all stay up to date with what's going on and the latest facts. Today we're very lucky to have with us David Seagel, who is Israel's Consul General in Los Angeles. It is one of the most important jobs in the Israeli foreign ministry. And there's a reason why David is serving in that position, because he's one of the most talented professionals in the Israeli foreign ministry. I had the honor of working with David back when he was the press spokesman for the embassy here in Washington, D.C. Given the fact that he was born in Vermont before his family moved to Israel, he speaks perfect English, and he understands our American mentality, and it makes for a very insightful spokesman for Israel, a real asset for Israel in a time like this. David since left the D.C. for a little less dangerous posting as Israel's #2 man in the Eritrean embassy. And now he is back serving as Israel's Consul General in Los Angeles, and really Israel's new representative in Western United States. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Israel's Consul General, David Seagel. David, the floor is yours.
Thank you, David. I first want to say how deeply we appreciate your support, your time on the phone with us today, the fact that CUFI is the largest pro-Israel organization in the world. We appreciate your support, your prayers, and your political action. And we are always thankful to Pastor John Hagee for his unparalleled friendship and leadership and trailblazing role that he has played in recent decades in bringing us all together and reuniting the family of Jews and Christians. So again, we're deeply appreciative, David, to you, for your leadership all these years and for our long friendship. Thank you all very much. Tonight, Israel time, we're still unfortunately in the situation that we've been in for 10 days now, where a brutal terror organization, it's a fascist terror organization named Hamas, which is anti-Jewish, anti-Christian, anti-women, anti-anything that we hold dear, is holding its own population hostage in Gaza and is firing rockets into Israeli civilian population communities, population centers. To date, roughly 1,500 rockets have been fired into Israel over the last month, over 1,200 over the last 10 days since this operation began. Each and every one of those rockets is targeted at civilian communities under international law that only has one name and one term. It is a war crime. You cannot fire rockets at civilians with no consequences. So here is the state of Israel, a small, vibrant democracy with 8 million people, 6 million of which are under a constant barrage of rocket fire for 10 days now, day and night. Those rockets can reach, unfortunately, as north as Haifa and beyond, and is literally covering 80% of the state of Israel right now. They are fired repeatedly at the holy city of Jerusalem, at Tel Aviv, at Haifa, and at scores of cities. You can count 50 to 100 cities and towns that constantly under bombardment. Anyone who has the app on your iPhone called Red Alert, I'm looking at it right now as I speak. There are rocket falls all over southern Israel, and unfortunately, people are suffering day in and day out with this constant rocket fire.
I'm going to interrupt David Seagel's informational talk on the phone call by interjecting something that I was led to do at the end of 2013. I was led, I believe, by the Holy Spirit to send my book, The Last Chronicles of Planet Earth, to the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. I knew that the Prime Minister was engaging in Bible studies at his home, and I was encouraged to send him my book. I was also encouraged to point out, please, Prime Minister, read the chapter on the call for peace and safety and the Psalm 83 war, because I was led to believe that he was going to be in a confrontation very, very soon, and then I needed to get him the book so that he can get all the information, all the documents to read that chapter. And so I went to the post office and I mailed him off the copy of my book in the hopes that the Prime Minister would read that chapter, knowing that shortly he would be engaged again with the Hamas and the PLO, who would try once again in forcing other nations to come down into Israel, as Israel would be forced and looked upon as an aggressor when they went in to try to stop the Hamas and Hezbollah and the PLO from sending in rockets. For years I've been saying, don't believe that the Hamas, the Palestinians, are going to stop sending rockets and mortars. It's just not going to happen. They may stop for a few days or a few months, and they're going to start up again, knowing that they have a plan, which I'll cover a little bit after we listen to a little bit more of what Consulate General David Seagel has to say. But as you can see, I did send him the book, and I'm praying that he did read that, because he is faced right now with what I had the premonition to tell him back at the last part of December 2013. Let's continue on to hear what David is saying, what's going on in Israel today, July 17, 2014.
80% of Israel, in American terms, would mean rocket fire on every major city in the United States, from Philadelphia to Los Angeles. It is something that no one should tolerate, no country would. The United States certainly would end this in a minute because of the public outcry. That would be clear if there was rocket fire on this country, on civilian targets. You can only imagine what American moms and dads would be expecting from their government, and it's the same expectation in Israel. Job number one of any government is to protect their people, certainly from massive and indiscriminate terrorist rocket fire, the likes of which we have not seen, frankly, since World War II. And if you think about, previous wars that Israel has been in, there has never been a situation in which all of our major cities have been under bombardment at the same time since 1948. So it's a very, very dramatic time. And again, no democracy, no country would ever allow this. And unfortunately, we're in this situation now, and we will not allow it. The goals of this mission remain very clear: to restore a sustainable peace and security to the people of Israel. Now, the problem on the other side of the border, on the other side of the line in Gaza, is the following. Hamas is the regime there. It's a terror organization. They have disappeared underground. No leadership exists. There's no governmental authority right now on the streets of Gaza. The civilians are left to fend for themselves, yet Hamas has purposely placed the rocket launchers, the manufacturing sites, the arms depots, deeply embedded in civilian areas. I'm going to give you some of the latest examples that we just received, and it's simply unbelievable. The United Nations is now officially complaining that they discovered 20 rockets inside a UN-run school today. They are now complaining to Hamas that is, again, something that is illegal, and it's a violation of everything that we know. You don't use United Nations installations as centers for combat. It's simply unthinkable. But yet that happened today. Yesterday, there was rocket fire in Israel from a launcher that was placed purposely outside of a UN school populated with children that they are now protecting. So we're in an impossible situation where most of the remaining launchers that are being aimed at Israel right now, at our civilian targets, are placed in deeply embedded civilian areas. The IDF, Israel's Air Force, and other forces We are doing everything we can to minimize civilian casualties in a nearly impossible situation. No other army, including the U.S. Army, no other army, drops leaflets, makes phone calls, sends personalized text messages, and then eventually, when there's no choice, places a knock, quote-unquote, on a roof to warn civilians to vacate an area so that we can finally take out those rocket launchers that are being directed at us. It's the ultimate of asymmetric conflicts. We tell the population to move out. The Hamas is warning and threatening the population to remain, including threatening the UN folks that are providing shelter to the civilians there. So it's a very, very difficult situation. Thank God that we have Iron Dome, the most robust missile defense system in the world, thanks to the United States, to the Congress, and to the government of the U.S., down the administrations that have supported and funded this, because it is saving Israeli lives every day, because out of those 1,500 rockets that were fired at Israeli cities, nearly a quarter of them that were aimed at residential areas, nearly a quarter of them were taken out of the sky at a success rate of over 90% by the 10 Iron Dome batteries that Israel is now employing to protect itself. It's protecting Jews, Christians, Arabs, Muslims in Israel. It's protecting also the Palestinians, because without Iron Dome, the entire might of Israel's military would now be landing on the rooftops of Gaza to end the rocket fire. So thank God for Iron Dome. It is saving lives. It's giving Israel's government the time that it needs to degrade the military infrastructure there so that eventually they have nothing left to fire at us, and eventually there will be some sort of agreement and arrangement that will guarantee the end of the rocket fire, which is the goal of this operation. Right now, you're hearing about mediation attempts on the part of Egypt, on the part of the Friends of Hamas, which happen to be Qatar and other countries in the Middle East that are helping fund them. We're very interested in strong mediation, mainly by Egypt, backed by the United States, that can end this once and for all and provide us again with the guarantees that we need to get back to the business of building our state, of innovating, on working on issues that are important to humanity, whether it's food security, water security that is important to the United States, medicine, and everything else that Israel and the United States do together for the betterment of mankind. So I thank you again, members of CUFI, for your important voice, your important leadership in helping Israel defend itself and ultimately helping any democracy defend itself in the face of the coming threats that will come at us in future years of terrorists embedding themselves in civilian populations and targeting civilian populations on the other side. It's critical for the world, and it's critical for Israel, and we thank you very much for your support.
Well, thank you, Consul General. We really appreciate your words and your updates and your passion for this most important cause. If anyone on the board has questions for the Consul General, please let me know. In the meantime, I want to read some questions that were emailed in advance of our call from many of our members participating in the call today. You went into this a little bit in your comments, but perhaps you can elaborate, David. This is really, I think, fundamental to the vast moral divide between Hamas and Israel. But Susan Peterson asks the following question. How exactly do you notify innocent people in the target areas before shooting begins?
Absolutely, David. Be happy to take that question. It's very important. We know that roughly 40% of the rocket fire is being employed against Israel or fired against Israel from the northern communities of the Gaza Strip. Over the last few days, it's an unfortunate move that we have to take, but it's the least of all evils. We have asked the population to vacate those neighborhoods so that we can take out those rocket launchers without harming civilians. You should also know that not only are we trying to move the civilians out of those areas. But even when the civilians are there, we are taking very, very high-tech and surgical measures to try to get to the terrorist targets without harming civilians. And the way you do that is by informing them ahead of time that there's a certain structure that has to be taken out. And if you give them the time to leave and they're not threatened by Hamas, they should be able to do so. And we have repeated instances, and we have video of this to prove it, about pilots being over targets, seeing civilians in the vicinity, and repeatedly calling off operations because the civilians are there. Now Hamas is calling on them and is actually threatening them to go up to the rooftops in order to prevent Israel from being able to take out the rocket launchers. So again, we've seen it in UN installations, in schools, in mosques, in hospitals. It's being repeated throughout this campaign and previous campaigns. So it's very difficult, but we're doing everything we can to move those civilians out of harm's way while Hamas is trying to do the opposite. It's very important to maintain that distinction. Let me just mention one more element of this warfare that is very dangerous. We're focused on the rockets, but you should also know that Hamas is trying to invade Israel. They tried to do it at least twice from the sea, and they're now employing very significant tunnels to attack Israel by tunneling under Gaza, under the border, under the crossings where we're providing them with humanitarian supplies, and then popping up out of a hole inside Israel. This happened this morning at 4:30 a.m., where 13 heavily armed Hamas terrorists entered Israel and were on their way to a kibbutz called Sufa, a civilian community, and God knows what could have happened there had we not located these terrorists. They would have penetrated a kibbutz, committed a mass massacre, and then taken hostages back into the tunnel, all under the cover of night. So our forces now are watching every possible area along the border that might be used to penetrate Israel with tunnels underground. So all of this relates to the civilians of Gaza as well, because they're beginning to dig these tunnels from inside, again, heavily dense civilian areas. So if this continues, we may have to employ ground troops to stop both the tunnel threat and the rocket threat and the other threats that they're just throwing at us with everything they have.
Now, once again, I'm going to stop the phone conversation with the Consul General who was stationed in Los Angeles for Israel, because he's talking about the possible ground assault going in to the Gaza. In my prophecy seminar yesterday at Lompoc, California, and on my post for the past 4 or 5 months, I've been warning, or at least trying to warn the people to get ready for a ground invasion. And now, today, after the many rockets that are being poured into Israel, Israel is faced with a dilemma. They cannot knock out and get rid of all the Hamas without actually going in on the ground. I knew this. Now, the bad part about doing this is the world will see, as I said, Israel as the aggressor. The mighty tanks rolling in and the Israeli soldiers killing what the liberal press is going to say are helpless people. And this is going to isolate the nation of Israel. This is going to cause many of the allies that Israel has presently had to start chipping away or falling away. Israel will be left alone at the end of the day. Now that will take time, but that's also a part of Bible prophecy. Now, as I've been warning, Israel has to go in because Hamas will never stop until they get back Jerusalem. That's their goal. Take back Jerusalem and take back all of the territories that were lost in the previous wars. Now, today, as I was listening to the conversation on the phone by the Consulate General for Israel in Los Angeles at approximately 1:26 Pacific Standard Time here in California, the news came over the Jerusalem Post. The IDF starts a Gaza ground invasion. It says Netanyahu office says purpose of mission is to destroy the terror tunnels and is to seriously harm the infrastructure of Hamas and other terrorist organizations in Gaza. It says, after days of waiting and deliberation, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Thursday night decided the IDF to send ground troops into Gaza to strike the terror tunnels into Israel, signaling that the initial phase of the ground attack will be limited. A statement put out by the Prime Minister's office said that Netanyahu and Defense Minister Moshe Elian Netanyahu directed the IDF to prepare to extend the ground operation. Now, as I've been warning, what could happen here is that the world will see that this mighty army from Israel is going into these supposedly helpless people, but now that we know that they're moving towards almost 1,700 rockets since a week ago, that the world will see Israel as the aggressor. And it could solidify the bordering nations who are watching what's going on between the Palestinians, the Hamas, and Israel. And it just may drag these nations in to try to help the Hamas and the Palestinians, thinking that if they get together, they can all wipe out the nation of Israel. If that happens, and I'm saying if it happens, get ready, because more than likely we'll see the Psalm 83 war. And I'm praying that, as I said earlier in this presentation today, praying that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu read that chapter about Psalm 83. Israel may take a hit. They're already getting missiles, but Israel will never be destroyed by Hamas, Hezbollah, ISIS, the Palestinians, or anyone else. Israel, after this next war, will still be standing when the terrorists will be defeated. Put that on your calendar. That will happen. Now, I've been warning for a long time there's going to be another ground invasion against the Palestinians. It was inevitable. And while I was making this video for you concerning what the Consulate General from Israel was stating about the current affairs in Israel, the Prime Minister of Israel ordered this ground invasion to begin. Here's a news broadcast about that very issue.
He has instructed the military to begin a ground offensive in Gaza. All these reports then quite accurate. The military have begun a ground offensive. That is an official statement from the Israeli government. So the reports we had from our own correspondent in Gaza that there was widespread power outages, then loud explosions and the sounds of a large thud, part and parcel of a picture emerging from Shireen Tadros, our correspondent, from other journalists, from ordinary civilians who are reporting by social media that some kind of offensive was underway. Confirmation then from the Israeli government, from the Prime Minister's office, a ground offensive has begun. Now, there are reports suggesting the Israeli Navy is shelling Gaza from the west, standing out to sea. There was another report suggesting that the eastern border with Israel, Gaza and Israel, was also under attack, and this would be consistent, one would imagine, in terms of military strategy, that there would be air power put in, missiles launched, munitions sent over Gaza in preparation for a ground offensive, which we now got confirmation from the Israeli Prime Minister in an official statement. A ground offensive has begun. He's instructed the military to begin that. And our Foreign Affairs correspondent Lisa Holland has been with me on this.
So I'm going to stop it right there, and you can obviously watch this on YouTube by just putting in the urgent Netanyahu confirms IDF launching ground invasion into Palestine. So here is what we need to watch, as I mentioned. What will the world say? What will the world do? And will it cause and force the allies of the Palestinians to march against Israel? Let's go back now to the Consulate General from Israel, George Seagel.
Thank you, David. And it's so important that everyone know, and be well versed in is the repeated measures Israel takes to protect innocent civilians in Gaza, often losing the element of surprise. Funny thing, when you get warning you're about to bomb a building, oftentimes the terrorists are the first to flee. But Israel's willing to do that and repeatedly does that because it so values innocent human life. David, you mentioned something that a few of our members have asked about, and it's probably speculation at this point. But everyone is wondering. I have a question from Joel Fago in Hereford, Arizona. How soon might a ground invasion begin?
Well, a ground invasion, ground troops, is one of the methods that Israel might have to employ to achieve the goals of this operation, which are, again, to degrade their capabilities and to achieve a long-term sustainable peace and security for Israel. Ground troops may be necessary. Unfortunately, Gaza is very treacherous ground. It's heavily populated, as we've discussed. Hamas is well dug in tunnels. It's all mined, and they're probably hoping that we do that, both to use the pictures of civilian casualties and to use, whatever casualties they inflict on our side as propaganda cards in their gambit, which is to increase their lost legitimacy in the Arab world. We need to understand that Hamas is completely isolated now in the Arab, obviously in the international community, but certainly in the region. Egypt, their neighbor, sees them as a major threat, and rightfully so. The Palestinian Authority right now is having big difficulties with them as well. The Palestinian people are seeing the destruction that is being sowed in their name, rather than having a Palestinian government be responsible and build schools and erect hospitals. What they've been spending all their resources on is not their people, but building this whole underground of terrorism and so on, and leaving their population completely exposed. So they're isolated, and what they're hoping is for an Israeli ground invasion that will help them build their legitimacy as the resistors of Israel.
All right, once again, I'm going to break in on the Consulate General and bring you to an article that I showed in my prophecy seminar yesterday, which was the 16th. I had no idea what the Consul General was going to say today, obviously. But in my presentation, I showed him this slide. 4-front war. First time in history. Israel attacked from Lebanon, Syria, Gaza, and Sinai. And in that presentation, I said this is the first time since 1948 this has happened. And what we're seeing now from the Consulate General's information that you're going to hear in a few seconds, the Consulate General, David Seagel, mentions this very thing, how they're being attacked by Lebanon, Syria, Gaza, and Sinai. And what's so important about this is every single one of these nations are listed in the Psalm 83 war. So, again, it's ominous events that are taking place in Israel. Will it draw these other nations fully into a major war against Israel? I'm telling you, yes, it will. Will it happen this week? Will it happen next week or next month? I can't tell you that, but I do know this. God said that it was coming, and by all indications, it is coming. Let's go back to listen to what the Consulate General from Israel says about this.
So we take every step very carefully, being aware, by the way, that we're not alone in the region. We're seeing rocket fire into Israel from Syria, rocket fire into Israel from Lebanon, rocket fire into Israel from Sinai, and rocket fire into Israel from Gaza. So we have a four-frontal situation. We're seeing countries around us collapse one after the other, and those that remain are under severe threat. So we have to take very careful measures, and the choice of using ground troops will be a last result if we see that the rocket fire only intensifies, which it is right now as we speak, only intensifying around 20 rockets an hour right now. And if we need to use troops, we will, in order to reach, to fulfill the goals of this operation.
Well, thank you, David. As of the moment, would you agree it's fair to say if Hamas stopped firing its rockets, the conflict would end. Yes, the fate of Hamas in Gaza in the hands of Hamas.
We've said this repeatedly. This is why the responsibility really is on their head, because they are responsible for this conflict. They began this conflict, the latest round, on June 12th. For 3 weeks, as they kidnapped our 3 teenagers and brutally murdered them, for 3 weeks, they fired 300 rockets into Israel. In one day, during those weeks, they fired more rockets into Israel than all of 2013 together, over 80 rockets on July 7th. That was the day we started this operation. And during those 3 weeks, we pleaded with them. We said, we are not interested in a conflict with you. Stop the rocket fire, and we can end this peacefully. But they ignored us and only increased the rocket fire, saw Israel's response as weakness, miscalculated, and ended up in a major operation that Israel had to start. We've stopped the fire again today for that humanitarian ceasefire. And again, we see no response. Once that ended, they renewed the fire again in a brutal and ferocious way right now, as we see. So we would be more than happy to have an agreement that guarantees Israel the peace and security for the long term that we're looking for.
It's amazing the contortions one would have to go through to paint Israel as the aggressor here. And yet, to the surprise of none of us, we see some in the media doing exactly that. By way of context, David, and you did mention some of this in your remarks, but Erica Collins asked, can you describe the human rights situation in Gaza under Hamas? Specifically, what's it like to be a woman or a Christian in Gaza under Hamas?
Well, it's hard to know what it's like to be a Christian in Gaza now, because there are very little Christians that remain. Most of them escaped, and many of them to Israel, by the way, which is really turning into the regional refuge for Christians and safe house for Christians in the Middle East. Christians of Gaza have escaped. Very few remain, and their situation was terrible. They were constantly under threat. If we all remember, when Hamas took over, it got a lot worse for them. We're seeing the plight of Christian communities all over the Middle East, and we're seeing many of their remnants come to Israel, set up communities in Israel, but more importantly, set up organizations, radio and TV stations that broadcast back to the Christian communities of the Middle East from Israel. So living under Hamas is terrible for anyone. We see what Gaza looks like. There's no development. The crossings, the humanitarian supplies that go into Gaza, they're all coming from the international community, and they're coming from Israel. And we see the metals and the building material and the cement that we eventually let them take in, even though we were against that because of international pressure. Those resources did not go to build homes or build schools or build hospitals. They all went into the terror infrastructure that Hamas has created. And now, after 10 days, we see how significant that infrastructure really is. They have rockets that can reach pretty much all of Israel. Most of them are underground. They're automatic. They're being fired by remote control. This is the infrastructure that they've invested in, not in the lives of their civilians, not even in bomb shelters or helping their civilians in the situation that they themselves created. So it's an abysmal situation in terms of human rights. The population is fearful of Hamas to the extent that they're staying in those areas that are dangerous because they're being threatened not to leave. So we can only imagine how difficult and painful existence is under such a regime.
Thanks, David. We have time for one more question, and it's probably the most popular questions we received today. El Mahan asks, how can we ordinary American Christians help your cause? We have our summit coming up in a few days, and perhaps you can answer her question and also mention the summit and in your eyes the value of it.
Well, absolutely, David, and thank you for that question. First of all, as I said at the beginning, Christians United for Israel is exactly that. It is the largest pro-Israel organization, certainly in this country and perhaps in the world. It is a very important summit to be at. That is where you feature your political presence in this country as a united voice. And America for Israel is critical. Everything from Iron Dome to the diplomatic, strategic support and partnership that we both share, and we support each other. So the Christian voice is critical. And as you yourself said, David, the battle right now is in the media, in the pictures that some of them are not even from Gaza. They're propaganda pictures from other areas of warfare in the Middle East, and God knows, there are enough of those. In Syria, 150,000 people dead, and the world doesn't say barely a word. The pictures from Syria are being attached on Facebook by the proponents of Hamas as if it's Israel doing that devastation in Gaza. So in many cases, you're seeing propaganda, and you're seeing real pictures, unfortunately, of the devastation in Gaza that we try, again, to minimize the hardship to civilians, but we must stop that rocket fire like any other country would do. So I would say the order of the day is to educate ourselves, our friends, and certainly public officials in America, and to elicit public statements of support for Israel. Because if Hamas sees these CNN programs and the other way the media is portraying their civilians under attack and so on, this only strengthens them and guarantees that we'll be witnessing more and more rounds like this in the future, where innocent people will be killed because the terrorists are empowered to continue doing what they're doing, which again is a double war crime. It should not be allowed. It should be completely rejected and condemned by the world. And the way you do that, the way you ensure that, is by having a united voice and making sure that people in positions of power, both politically and in terms of public opinion, make their voices known. And the only way to do that is to be united, educated, and effective. And that's everything that Kufa does.
Well, thank you very much for that. Folks, I know a lot of you are already joining us. Those who can't, we understand it's time, it's an expense, but if you have the ability at all, we're going to be in town Monday and Tuesday, the 21st and 22nd of July. 21st will be all updates like the one you just heard from experts in the field, people with the most recent, up-to-date, insightful information. And then Tuesday, we're going to Capitol Hill. If you've been watching the news, you see anti-Israel demonstrations across the country. Israel's enemies are speaking out. And as Consulate General Seagel pointed out, they're not always telling the truth. But they're speaking out, and they're creating the impression that Americans want America to break from Israel, to oppose Israel, to force Israel to stop defending itself. That impression's out there. Unless we speak up and we say, no, Israel is justified. Israel's doing what any other country would do. We back Israel's right to self-defense. That information won't be presented to our leaders. Our leaders may be under a very dangerous misimpression that the American will is otherwise.
Well, now they're talking about Iran and the nuclear quest for a nuclear bomb. I want to show you what I gave to you in one of my YouTube videos that I put up at my prophecy site. Because for the past 6 years, I've been warning the people, don't expect Iran to stop their quest to get a nuclear bomb. It's simply not going to happen. Iran is destined to go to war against Israel after the Psalm 83 war. Now I'm going to bring you to my YouTube video, and the name of it, if you want to Google it, go to Iran will never stop their quest for a nuclear bomb. I'm going to play a portion of this video for you so you can see one of my warnings about this issue. Then I'm going to go back to the Consulate General from Israel, David Seagel's conversation, and you will hear them say what I've been warning about for the past 6 years. In all the key areas and work on the concrete elements of a possible agreement, this statement said. Now, let me warn you again, like I've been warning you for the past 5 years. There is not going to be in the news where the Iranians give up their nuclear program. It's not going to happen. Iran is working to get a bomb to use against Israel. Flat out, you might as well put that in the back of your mind. Now, what I want to show you is this. I've been warning you what is going to happen. Now, in one of my videos, and of course, I've been warning this, it's all over my website, both in my older prophecy website, the BibleProphecyMan.com website, and the End Times Research Ministry website that you can get to, and I'll give you that address right now, as you can see it coming on the screen. But I want to give you one of my warnings about what is going to happen. And I believe that this warning came in 2013. Let me just play it.
Now here's one from January, the 29th of 2009. I'm going to just scroll down and you'll see it right here covered in the blue. Here are the facts. Israel is running out of time to deal with Iran's surge in obtaining a nuclear bomb. And for the past 2 years, the Israeli officials have warned that they will take out Iran's nuclear site if the UN cannot get them to halt their production. At the same time Israel is warning Iran, Iran comes back and says, we will never stop the nuclear program. Let me add these facts. If you are new to my site, you may not know this, and you should. Israel warned Iraq and Syria about their nuclear ambitions just the way they are now warning Iran. And Israel bombed both Iraq and Syria's nuclear site and put an end to their quest for obtaining a nuclear bomb. What would make you think Israel won't carry out their word that they will destroy Iran's site? Now, that was just one of my warnings. I can't put them all up here for you, but you're going to have the link there and you can read.
So I'm going to stop it right there because I've issued many, many warnings, all of which are coming to pass. Now I want to go back and we're going to conclude the conversation that we heard today from the Consulate General, David Seagel, and we're going to pick up where they're talking about Iran.
We're going to be in town the day after the 6 months to negotiate a nuclear deal with Iran has ended. And guess what? There's no nuclear deal with Iran. So the debate now is, do we give them even more time to negotiate? Time they use to race towards a nuclear weapon? Or do we say enough is enough? Iran really isn't interested in giving up the nuclear weapons. Why do we keep giving them more time to do exactly that? This is a crucial time. And we pray you can join us, and not with us in body. We know you'll be with us in spirit. Thank you all for being on the call. And Consul General Seagel, thank you so much for your zealous advocacy for your country of Israel, for your leadership when it comes to Israel, and for your friendship to us. We'll all be praying for you and your strength and your energy in the days to come. We know the enormous pressure you must be under.
Thank you, David, and you should all know how deeply we appreciate your support, and that this is a critical battle, not just for the security of Israel, but also for the peace of Israel, for the peace of Jerusalem. The only way to achieve peace is through strength. When you have enemies like Hamas, and those enemies will ultimately be defeated, and we will achieve the hopes, goals, dreams, and prayers of our people and our friends around the world. So thank you again.
Thank you very much, sir. God bless you, and thank you all for participating today. God bless you. We hope to see many of you on Monday here in Washington, D.C. That concludes our call. Thank you.